five-time All-Star Marques Johnson.
Alongside Marques Johnson.
What's up, everybody? Hey, this is the Here District, captain of this vessel. And I got my first mate, my number one son, Chris Johnson.
What up? Talk to me.
Holla!
Let it rain, man. Let it rain.
I guess what? We're going back into the Friday.
Yeah. Okay, pass us all the breakfast.
Okay, pass
Go fight. Welcome everybody to the Here District, Marques Johnson.
You're listening to a Bucks Plus audio production on the Bucks Plus Network.
Your weekly pulse on the Milwaukee Bucks, straight from a Bucks legend. This is Here District with Marques Johnson, alongside his son and 1995 NCAA champion, Chris. Here's MJ.
All right, welcome to Here District. I'm the captain of this vessel. Man, what a fantastic voyage this has been. Not always good, but sometimes the rocky voyages, Chris, can be just as interesting and entertaining, man. My second mate, my son, Chris Johnson, we are the only father and son combination, Rob Perez, in the history of college basketball to win a national championship at the same school. The same school. That's the one caveat. There's been other guys that have won championships, but at the same school, 20 years apart. And we welcome Worldwide Rob Perez. Welcome to Here District, man.
Appreciate you guys having me. That's a lot for me to live up to. I mean, can anyone compete with the Johnson family? I know you're not the only Johnsons either. So like, it's just me. I'm just Wob.
Yeah. No, we like to throw that out there just to, create a little, just to occupy some space in our guests' minds. Just momentarily, just briefly.
Done,
man.
accomplished.
Good. Listen, so it's funny. I was on your show earlier today. Now you do a great show, Sirius XM. You and Antonio Daniels. And so when our producer, the great Monas Khan, was like, "We've got Worldwide Rob, Worldwide Rob." Anyway, I got dentures, so I have tough time saying stuff like that. But anyway, I didn't know exactly who he was talking about. He talked about this great Twitter following and a basketball guy, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, well, sounds good. And then when I heard that you and Antonio Daniels co-hosted the show, it's like, man, I listen to this guy almost every day.
Every day.
I love you
in
guys.
the car.
You guys do a great job bouncing off each other, man. What's it like working with Antonio, man? It's got to be fun, man. You guys seem to have a good time together.
Yeah, it is a good time. It's a good show when you don't even need to prepare topics to go into the particular program with, because you just riff off of each other's chemistry. And we've known each other longer than we thought before we officially met in person, because my first job out of college was working for the New Orleans Hornets before they became the New Orleans Pelicans. So I was working at the Hornets when Antonio Daniels was backing up Chris Paul in 2009, 10, right. It's been so long, I forgot. But he was the backup there. So we know all the same people, we've in New Orleans and beyond. And then we meet in person. We have a lot more in common than we thought. We're like, oh, this is going to be easy. And then just seeing the NBA through the lens that we do, which is always a combination of old school and new school. And we were just having this convo before we went live, but the dichotomy in a way that exists now and how different the game is compared to just the 90s or even the 80s, right? That I find it interesting conversation to meet in the middle somewhere, and it's not one era was good, the other is bad. And that's kind of the discourse that exists today, and an unfortunate problem with all of the narratives and agendas surrounding, current day players and performances. So having him there is a great balance of being on the internet, but also not forgetting how we got here in the first place, the nostalgia. And it's, that type of chemistry that I think we continue to thrive off of.
In terms of the Bucks, man, when and I don't know if you're on this bandwagon, Rob, but they're talking about play-in. And I'm thinking to myself, man, these guys are crazy. They absolutely don't know what they're talking about. No way this Bucks team is going to be a play-in team. And then we start out 1-8, 2-8. And now we're up to 6-9 at the time of this recording, just beat the Bulls. And so it's looking better. It's looking on the bright side, as we shared. I shared on your show a little bit earlier this afternoon. But where were you at the beginning of the season on the Bucks? Your thoughts about everything going on in Milwaukee right now. Chris Middleton, there was some stuff that was mentioned about him and the double ankle surgery when he's coming back. What's your perspective for our Milwaukee fans on the Bucks and the prospects? Let me put it that way for the remainder of the season.
I wasn't ready to hit the alarm until I saw the Bucks play at Madison Square Garden a little bit earlier this season. And the reason was because nothing to do with Giannis or like his potential or Damian Lillard. It was every single 50-50 ball that occurred in that game went to the New York Knicks. Every single closeout was late. It was as if these guys had not played a single game in a gym together. There was miscommunication on defense that was resulting in wide open looks. There was a lot of finger pointing, and it was a combination of lack of preparation as well as effort that stood out to me. And I go, okay, now it's a conversation here because these guys aren't even trying compared to what's possible. But ever since then, and now this 5-game stretch that I had circled, we talked about it on Sirius XM. If they don't go 4-1 in this 5-game stretch against these teams, that's the bare minimum that they have to do. And ultimately, they did win 4 out of 5. So how did they end up winning these games that they were supposed to, that they weren't winning prior in the season? And it starts with the additions of Andre Jackson Jr. and AJ Green, either into the starting lineup or just full-time minutes. The defensive effort in comparison to that night at Madison Square Garden, through the roof. Do you know the game I'm talking about? NBA?
Sure. Oh, yeah,
okay.
Of course.
All right. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Trust me. It was not pretty to look at.
The eye test, as someone that just consumes a lot of basketball, that watched that game, you watch the Bucks now, and it's night and day. It's a completely different team. Then you go to the analytics to support your eye test, which is why I love stats and analytics. I'm not one of those one end to the extreme or the other. I use analytics to see if the numbers support my opinion. And then you see that the Milwaukee Bucks have gone from a bottom 5 defense up to top 10 almost instantly. Yeah. And Damian Lillard had a very interesting quote in his post-game press conference where he was speaking to his introduction to AJ Green. And he said, the first time I knew about him is when we played against him and how he was able to fight through screens. And like, it was noticeable. He was annoying the hell out of me. I'm paraphrasing what Dame said, but there was a quote along those lines. And now that they're in the same uniform and he's getting that opportunity, the defense has caught up. The constant this entire time has been Giannis. We know that. Only Giannis is averaging more points than Anthony Davis this season when he was the guy that was supposed to be like MVP front runner in those first couple of weeks. But Giannis still to this day is at least at the time of recording this, leading the league in points per game. Bucks are 12-2 when Damian Lillard has 10 plus assists in games. Now all these numbers are starting to average themselves out. Giannis is just coming off a 25-point third quarter. And it's that consistency from Giannis that has always been there. That the guarantee. We have a guy that every single night is going to leave it out on the floor in victory or in defeat. And to see that play against the Houston Rockets, I know it ultimately was a little lucky that Fred VanVleet threw that ball a little too far, but let's talk about what Giannis did well in the possession before that. He switches on to Fred VanVleet willingly, voluntarily in space and says, you know what? I got this. No more me just hanging out at the rim, being that free safety that I've been, potential defensive player of the year doing through the Mike Budenholzer strategy. So he's out there. I got this. Go away. He takes on that job. Fred VanVleet tries to cross him up, take him off the dribble. Good luck. He does a decent job of it. He drops a dime to Alperen Şengün. Şengün does his little flat-footed put shot that he's killed teams with all year. Here comes Giannis soaring through the air like a dark cloud at the beginning of Armageddon to swat that ball away. And I don't want to hear that he was out of bounds when he landed. They didn't call it, so I don't care. He still ends up making a great play regardless, right? Yeah. And it's that level of effort that we did not see from the team. Defense will solve all of your problems. When you play good defense, MJ, you know this as well as you, Chris. If you play good defense, that leads to easier opportunities at the other end. You get fast break opportunities. You get secondary transition. If you are giving up easy buckets yourself, you're walking the ball up and having a score out of half-court sets. A lot more difficult when there's 5 defenders back. Giannis's defensive level is contagious. And with AJ Green and Andre Jackson Jr. out there to reciprocate that, now you see why the Bucks are winning games that they're supposed to.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, AJ Green, there's a stat on Twitter what they were 5-3 when he plays 18 minutes or more, 1-6 or something when he does. And I'm not living or dying by that stat, but Chris and I have had this conversation all season long. You got to play young legs. You got to go with these young legs. The Bucks, before they inserted Andre Jackson Jr. to the starting lineup, it was like everybody was 30 or more, 30 or over. Had one of the oldest starting lineups in the league. And then, and I got to give my boy Brook Lopez some credit because, Chris played against his older brother in high school. So I've been knowing Brook and Rob since they were like 3 years old, running around the gym way back in the day at Montclair Prep out in Van Nuys. But and he's playing. He's averaged 20 a game over a 5-game stretch. He's rim protecting like crazy. Gary Trent Jr. Or the second or whatever it is. He's fine. We got 4 or 5 guys shooting 40+% over the last 5 that were just struggling big time.
And that's the biggest difference and why the Bucks are getting wins now is guys are knocking down shots. So many of those looks during that 2-and-8 stretch, the Bucks were just abysmal from beyond the arc. Now you got 5 guys that are shooting 40%, but making the timely threes. Now the Bucks are punching back. Like for a lot of those games in the first 10 games of the season, we were getting beat up. The Bucks were getting punched in the mouth, punched in the head, punched in the stomach, then knocked out. Now you get punched in the mouth. We're able to punch back, answer some of these shots, answer some of these stops. Guys are now taking pride. Sacrifice is what I had talked about several weeks ago when it came to Giannis and Dame. And now you see Dame really giving it up on the defensive end and not just settling with the off the bounce step back stuff from, 27 feet. He's now breaking down. He's attacking that second man to trigger help side, hitting, finding guys. I mean, he's all in the paint, second, third level on pick and roll. His pick and roll mastery against the Bulls as far as navigating those screens, finding Brook, finding Giannis, finding guys for open shots. It was like somebody said on the broadcast that his old trainer, Phil Beckner, was in town. Well, they need to move him out here and keep him out here because Dame is playing with a pep in his step. And this is the version of Dame Lillard that is going to take for the Bucks to get back to where they want to be. Rob, I wanted to ask you this. If the Bucks can finish the season, and we're fast forwarding far here, right? Top 4 seed. Giannis continues to do what he's doing. Is Giannis like a viable 1-2 MVP candidate with Jokic? What you think?
You have to finish in the top 4, especially in the East. The East stinks. They stink out loud. If you're not in the top 4, I think that should be a necessary prerequisite. And the Bucks will probably admit that if we can't finish in the top 4 this year, then no one on our team is the MVP. Now we know it depends also on what your definition of the V in MVP is, because that stands for valuable. Some people see valuable as if you took that player off the team, what happens to their record? In the case of the Milwaukee Bucks and the Denver Nuggets with Nikola Jokic, those teams go from top 4 in their respective conferences to potentially lottery picks or lottery teams. Yep. So you're sitting there thinking, that may not be the case with the Damian Lillard squad, but I'm using hyperbole to support my point here. Sure. Bear with me.
Sure. You're not too far off. You're not too far off either, but go ahead. Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, the Bucks did at least compete without Giannis in the series against the Pacers, but conversation for another day. So if you take that specific star off of the team, what happens to the record and the performance? Some people put their equity in their vote on that side. But then you look at the Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum, and you'd say that team is already good. And if you took Jason Tatum off, they're still the first place in the Eastern Conference. So how do you give that man the MVP when they're good? And Celtics fans will come back and say, how do you think we got good in the first place? Okay. Yeah. Like this guy's been with the organization for years. It's built around him, and the other players are good because of what he does on the floor. You can't fault him for making his teammates better. In that case, almost put more equity on our side because Jokic and Giannis have not made their teammates better. And this is why the MVP is always, a lightning rod of conversation. So that's the two sides, sides of the extremes, if you will.
Sure.
In regards to Giannis, his first of all, his numbers, if they finish top 4, I have said you always need a moment where you watch that game and you say, that's the MVP. Every MVP has it. I'm thinking of Steph Curry's double bang in Oklahoma City. I'm thinking of Russell Westbrook's game winner in Denver. I think he banked that off the glass from. Remember that? Every MVP has a whole moment. Nikola Jokic had his a couple of times against Joel Embiid on a national television platform. And you will know it when it happens. And you'll say, you know what? That's the MVP. So there are still every single box is left unchecked with the exception of Giannis's box score performances and his availability, that he's out there every single night And we know where this team would be headed without him. That's all we have at this moment.
One of the things you've been talking about, Rob, is that the league is going through a decline in popularity. So I come from the late 70s, early 80s, when playoff games were shown on tape delay on CBS at 11 o'clock, 11:30. I laugh now because it just seems so ridiculous. Just crazy and idiotic. But the drug issue, cocaine, and the NBA was an epidemic at that time, and there was some reports as many as 90% of players are on drugs, and that's what was turning off corporate America. It wasn't that high; it was maybe about 40. You got 30 or 40. Most of them my good friends, so I can speak from from experience. But the point is that ratings were down. There was a racial element. The league was 90% black, so there was a racial element introduced. White corporate America didn't want to buy into watching a bunch of black players who were on drugs, and then all of a sudden David Stern came in, and Magic came in, and Bird came in. All these perfect storm of events kind of came in. And David Stern was really a great at marketing the league at that point in time, and started marketing, I think, superstars against each other. And everything turned around. Can you speak on that? And what's the basis for that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we could turn this entire episode into a ratings conversation because it's that type of nuance that goes into this type of talk, but we don't want to dedicate the whole show to it. So what I will revert back to is right when you hung up during the show, Antonio and I were discussing this exact topic. And we were wondering why it just seems like, whether it's true or not, why star players are perceived to not care or not try, which is, first of all, not true, because from watching Giannis Antetokounmpo every night and what he's having to do to get victories, this is the highest level that he has exerted in a regular season, probably since his MVP campaign. So to say as a blanket statement that NBA stars specifically do not care about the regular season is simply false. There's Anthony Edwards, there's Giannis Antetokounmpo. Right. Go down the list. Before his injury, Kevin Durant in that bucket as well. But because of the situation in Philadelphia with Joel Embiid, you go down to New Orleans with Zion Williamson and the mismanagement of messaging by these front offices and players, always kind of telling us they're hurt, they're not hurt, they're available, they're maybe available. It's this inconsistency that has contributed to a loss of trust amongst the fan base, in which you have to wake up every day and make sure that guys are playing tonight before you decide to buy a ticket. And it's that type of mentality that did not exist back in your playing days or the 90s. And I don't want to be the old man yells at cloud, because that's what this is going to probably sound like. But the example I used in the 90s that Antonio spoke to a little bit as well and reaffirmed was the scarcity of opportunity. And what I mean by that is when you were playing in the 90s, the NBA on NBC on a Sunday was the biggest event of the week. Y'all were alive for this. You remember how big those Jordan games were on Sundays? Oh, yeah. If you were the team that got to play against Jordan or the Lakers or the San Antonio Spurs, that was a major event that everyone had circled. There was no cell phones where you can watch League Pass, all right? You couldn't take the game with you. Getting this opportunity on a major platform, it mattered. Now with ESPN, Disney, Amazon, NBC, cell phones, all the above, you can access any game anywhere. You don't have to read about it in the newspaper or watch it on tape delay like MJ you just mentioned before. So you have players with a scarcity of opportunity. They were making less money. There was not a gazillion dollar basketball related income coming in from broadcast deals like we're seeing now with all the new partners. So there's a guarantee that these NBA players are going to make a lot of money. Back then, your paycheck depended on your performance and performance alone. If you had a bad night, you couldn't go to your 10 million TikTok followers and monetize them and talk about how you had a bad game, or go on some podcast and then monetize that. That's why you saw rivalries on the court, because those regular season games mattered for that reason, period. We don't have that anymore. There's a comfortability that allows you to take the night off. There's a comfortability that allows front offices to load manage their guys, because all that matters now is championships. We have diluted the product. That's not all the fault of the NBA, but with the evolution of technology, these regular season games don't matter as much for for many reasons. And I think I just named a few.
What about the WNBA dynamic, just in terms of coming off of their season and record television viewership, record crowd, selling out 25,000, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Brianna, all these great. I mean, it was a hell of a W. Do you think NBA, do you think there's any spillage, any spillover, Chris, Rob, in terms of NBA fans just being a little, I'm off the NBA. I watched these ladies go at it hard. I got plugged into this whole different vibe in terms of a basket. I'm not talking about your hardcore NBA fans. I'm talking about like your casual NBA fans that like basketball but don't love it like we do. Do you think that there's some spillage over into that area because the WNBA was so live and successful this past summer?
I mean,
Chris,
I think it's an interesting point that you raise. I'd have to see some data on who these viewers are that maybe they were trying to convert over, and I don't know about the viewership, but what I do know is the WNBA was live. But I think the NBA viewership has a lot to do with what fans are perceiving the game to be about now. So this whole idea about every night it's a 3-point contest and it's a copycat league, so every team is running the same offense and everything looks the same. I think that is a bit overblown. If you watch the games, you do realize style of play does vary across the league. Everyone isn't doing the same things, but without that, I think there's just this concept from the casual fan that this is what's taking place, and I'm not going to get into it. There's also that side of it where the casual fan that might have been converted looks at the NBA sort of through a I don't know, political lens. I don't know if that has anything to do with it as well, with everyone in the NBA that's taken stances on one side of the political realm that might have turned off a large portion of the demographics of the viewership. I don't know, but I would think that all the factors that I'm talking about probably have a little bit to do with why. But I would love to hear what Wob thinks on this. Do you think that Wob has anything to do with it as far as the political side of things, turning people off with endorsing presidential candidates, being really outspoken, Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, the whole nine?
Well, in 2024, first of all, if you speak to politics, 50% of the people are likely going to like you and 50% are not. So you're cutting the net in half, if you will, in terms of who you appeal to. But I was going to answer your question with multiple of my own. Okay. In regards to the WNBA versus NBA dynamic here. Yeah, the ratings conversation is a 3-hour convo, and we'll do our best to try and spark note that right now. But you're going to find me keep going back to the scarcity reasoning. So my question back to you guys is, how many games do the WNBA play in a regular season?
30 something?
40.
Okay.
Okay. How many games is in a typical college basketball season?
Yeah, same amount. Right.
Like 30-ish. Okay.
30-ish, 38.
Hold on, let's keep going. How many games are in an NFL regular season?
17.
17. Those are all numbers to me, a lot less than 82. And because of 82, you have guys, this has been throughout history, and there's been examples. Let's use Hakeem Olajuwon. Let's use Robert Parrish. Let's use Karl Malone. I'm thinking of guys that played 82 games for multiple decades straight. The list goes long. Those are just the ones that come to the top of my head. It's not that they can't do it, but because they are choosing now for multiple reasons not to, that the NBA has set this, you need to play in 65 games minimum to qualify for individual awards. And this is the bar that we set. They still get the opportunity to take 17 games off for a multitude of reasons. And it is that type of flexibility that these players have, which has now resulted in this apathetic response from the fan base, in that there's so many games that I just don't feel like they're worth as much. 82 games in comparison to WNBA and college basketball specifically. If you lose and you're a bubble team in college basketball, like that one game on Saturday could determine your season. That is not the case in the NBA. And I do want to give them some credit, because the introduction of the play-in tournament has brought that aspect back a little bit. More teams are involved. The 8 seed and the 9 seed being 6 games apart with 2 weeks left in the regular season. It's over. Like the playoffs were set, and there's no point in playing games other than battling for seeding. But because of the play-in tournament, there is more postseason incentive.
Yeah.
It is there's so much inventory of basketball content right now, both on the floor and off the court, that I feel like it has been diluted. That's my personal opinion as to why something like the WNBA and NFL and college basketball, that they have less games and they're more scarce, that they have more value.
What's the solution? What's the solution? Are you saying we
shorten the season?
To
shorten the season?
60, and I mean, the money aspect, all the
that'll never happen. Shorting the season will not happen for a minimum of 10 years, since Amazon, NBC, Disney, and all the international partners, including WBD, Warner Brothers Discovery, by the way, who's still going to have access to highlights while not being able to broadcast live games, they are willing to pay even more money for this current product.
Yeah.
And as a result, they will not be lowering the games. They might even be adding more, like they have with the midseason tournament, the Emirates NBA Cup. So because this is a business, and the way that you grow the business is to provide more inventory, that's what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not lowering the amount of games. They're going to increase the number of teams. They're going to expand at some point, with expansion franchises. That will never happen. So we have to find a different solution than dropping the number of games in a regular season from 82 to 65. Because when has that happened in the past? COVID and lockouts, right? Are the only time we have seen the NBA play less than 82 regular season games.
Right.
So unless it is a pandemic or a collective bargaining agreement, which expires once every 10 years, unless one of the sides opts out, this is what we have to look forward to. So don't even think about proposing that, because the NBA will not be taking money out of its pocket to help satisfy the lust of a couple of fans complaining on the internet. Like millions of dollars. Those ads are already bought for everything.
But Rob, so now I'm thinking about from the NBA and their partners, from their perspective, in terms of the amount of money that they invested, they must have some data, as Chris says, some data that shows that across all the platforms, I mean, are we really accounting for the extent of the viewership when you think about being able to watch on your cell phone and watch on your watch and watch on? I mean, Chris, go ahead.
No, not to interrupt you, but a lot of that, those views are coming from illegal stream sites. So you have, League Pass, everything's being streamed illegally. There's millions of people watching. Even you saw with Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. This is not the same, but Antonio Brown was streaming the video board, and 6 million people were tuned in to his stream, literally on social media, of him streaming the video board with the fight on the video board. So they, technically didn't have to really tune into Netflix. But I'm wondering if that has a lot to do with some of this stuff that we're talking about too, not counting all the views, like all the numbers. Because who wants to subscribe to a bunch of different, there's so many ways to watch the NBA. My thinking is when you bring up partners, it's like they need to consolidate the streaming package, or something needs to be a little, they're never going to do it, but it's like you need to consolidate it. It turns off the consumer when you have to sign up for a bunch of different things just to watch an NBA game.
Barrier of entry to this is a topic that interests me greatly, and I provide, in a way, unintentional focus groups for fans to tell me, whether it's on SiriusXM or on Twitter, what the problem is. And that is by far the number one answer. It is difficult for me, a knowledgeable internet user, to find my team's games because I don't have said streaming service. And this year they moved it to this channel, or I bought League Pass and I'm blacked out. I can't watch my local games. Okay. They make it very difficult, or they did make it very difficult to find a particular player or team that you're interested in. All the stars had to align that you were in the right market at the right time that wasn't blacked out. Now, to the NBA's credit, they have specifically some teams like the Clippers, the Jazz, I think the Mavericks as well. There's certain franchises that are now broadcasting their games over the air. So you just need the bunny ears or an antenna to plug into your, the Bulls too. Like the Bulls require, you can get Bulls games over the air now. So you just need to have that HD antenna plugged into your television and you can watch the games. And if you don't want to do that, then they say you can download our proprietary app that the team has built, like they call it the Gotham Sports Network in New York or SEC Media in Utah. And you can pay $29.99 a month and you'll get all the access to the Jazz and the Utah Hockey Club, or in the Clippers case, you'll get Clipper Vision and all of these additional pieces of content. So there's the free route or close to the free route. And then there's the OTT route. So again, credit where credit is due that they're pivoting to that model. But for a long time, with the demise of cable television, the younger generation especially, they don't watch cable TV. They don't even know what cable TV is. I had a Zoomer in my apartment not so long ago, and they're like, what is that? I'm like, that's a cable box. What's a cable box? I mean, there's TV channels on there, AMC, Comedy Central. It was as if I was speaking a foreign language because they get their content from YouTube. They watch highlights. They watch second screen experiences on Twitch and TikTok. They don't consume content the same way that they did when the NBA originally finalized these deals with Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney. The model and the technology has changed, period. So illegal streams and all that, the NFL deals with it, but their numbers are going through the roof. And one thing I haven't heard as a part of this conversation yet, we have focused this only on the United States thus far. And this is why I need 3 hours to talk about ratings, that I haven't heard once the international impact of the NBA abroad. If you go to countries like the Philippines, China, Australia, the percentage of the population that consumes the NBA there dwarfs the United States here. Okay, we may have more, this is where the games are played and more total people, but there are countries where it is religion. You go to the Philippines, I was in Malta over the summer, and the only thing that these street vendors were selling was Boston Celtics and LA Lakers gear. That was it. Like, I'm like, how on earth did this end up here? And it is that international presence that the NBA has always prioritized since the Dream Team. You see Adam Silver putting in games. I'm sorry to cut you off, Chris, because I know
No, it's okay.
In Abu Dhabi, they play games in Tokyo. They go to Mexico City where there's potential expansion. They're gonna have the Paris games coming up with Wembanyama. There is huge popularity, and my fan base specifically is mostly international. I could go on length about that, but I have a ton of international followers for a multitude of reasons. And do not discount the international presence. And that's why the NBA is not saying the quiet part out loud. But we're okay with low ratings in the US because we wipe the floor with you in the rest of the world.
And I think that I'm wondering if like that development a couple years ago with the NBA and Tencent in China is now sort of affecting, the actual raw numbers on viewership. And the fact that like there isn't a Yao Ming like type of guy, like, because China used to carry a big portion of the NBA ratings on a nightly basis. It was like the same old thing when Yao Ming was playing for the Rockets. Tracy McGrady had like the second most popular jersey in the NBA because of the affiliation with Yao. I'm just trying to, Wob, do you have any like insight on that, or what do you think about that?
Okay, first of all, Derrick Rose would sell out stadiums. Do you know the difference between a stadium and an arena?
Yeah.
Basketball is played in arenas, football is played in stadiums. He would sell out stadiums for people just to see him walk on stage when he was doing his China trip with Adidas.
Yeah.
You go watch the videos on YouTube. There's like 100,000 people there just to get a glimpse of Derrick Rose during his prime, his zenith, his MVP campaign when he did his tour in China. You were talking about Yao Ming. These games were aired on state television, not just Tencent, but state television before the whole Daryl Morey Hong Kong thing happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It has been a minute since I don't know if it's on state television now, but it was once upon a time. And there are billions of people over there. So I will always fall back on this because the NBA thinks I over critique them too much, but I promise there's always a method to my madness because I'm going to defend them in the international regard because I've seen it myself. When these players go abroad, there's a reason why Klay Thompson is spending multiple weeks in China during the offseason to promote his shoe. We just saw James Harden over there drop the news. Remember that speech he gave about how I will never work with Daryl Morey again? That was in China, right?
Thanks.
There's a reason why they're doing that over there because the discourse is so popular that you have to, if you're thinking about NBA ratings, the United States should only be a drop in the bucket. It's important, yes, but there is such a bigger picture. There are people across the world that love this sport.
So I'm in Japan, Rob, Chris, probably early 80s. And it's an NBA tour, Adrian Dantley and just a Dr. J and a bunch of people is there. Yeah, legends, you know. And so the Tokyo Stadium is sold out. It's about 20,000 people. And so I come out early, Rob, Chris, to get some shots. I'm the first one out. And you could hear a pin drop. And it's just so quiet. So I'm shooting around, just quiet. Nobody's saying a word. They're so polite. And then so I miss a shot, get a rebound, go up and dunk it. And I hear, oh. I was like, oh, this is what y'all want to see. So I do like a reverse dunk. Oh, I do a windmill. Oh, they started standing up and cheering. I mean, they wanted to see some dunks. I did about 10 dunks, and by the time I got through with the dunks, they were on their feet cheering and giving, So it was just a really interesting experience. But you're right, the international plug-in. I mean, it's a fascinating conversation to have. So listen, man, we appreciate you, man, coming by, spending a little time with us, and fascinating conversation about the NBA, the international popularity. I mean, a lot of good stuff. Open a lot of eyes around here, and keep doing the great work that you and my boy Antonio do, man. I love listening to you guys every day, and you come back and join us, man, further on down the line, and we can kind of go over some of the stuff that we talked about today and see where it is at that point in time. I like to do that, man. Just kind of rehash some of that stuff, man.
I appreciate you guys having me, and I'll leave you with this from the international conversation that we just had before. Who did we send to North Korea to sit with Kim Jong-un?
Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman, because he had a fascination with the 90s Bulls and the Harlem Globetrotters. Period. Stay tuned to this podcast if you want the next episode in that conversation. There's a reason why an NBA player went to represent, regardless what you think of Dennis Rodman, it was him who was the olive branch. Period.
Period.
Who was on that team? Charles Smith. Who was out there with D-Rod? Who was on that squad, Chris? That crew.
Charles Smith was on the New York Knicks.
No, Charles Smith. No, when he went to Korea, he took a team of guys. Remember, he took a team. Charles Smith, a bunch of retired guys were over there, and Dennis had a little bit too much to drink at one point, and it got to be some great TV. But you're right, Dennis Rodman. He's the guy that we said. That's funny, man. Appreciate you, man.
Power the NBA, MJ.
Yeah, there you go, man. Appreciate you, man. Have a good one, man. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. It's time for one of our favorite segments, and we just introduced this a little while back, and it's gotten some really good response. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for their participation, who participated in Marcus's mailbag, coming up with some really good questions. And man, there was some friction between a couple of people, man, out there, like, going back and forth. I thought we was going to have to arrange a meeting in Temecula, man, between these two guys kind of going back and forth, man, just to kind of like, settle this, like, in Temecula, anyway. So let's get to the Marcus's mailbag.
Yeah, let me see what we got. Let me see what we got in the mailbag today. So look, first question for you, MJ, comes from Justin Willis at It's J Wills on Twitter. The question he has: what does Ajax have to do when other teams aren't guarding him so that he can stay on the floor? Boston and Houston have gone with this strategy, and Doc's response was to immediately bench Ajax.
Yeah, what Ajax play like 5 minutes against Houston, and then first started the game, then finished the game up.
Yeah.
Well, and this is the interesting thing about Ajax, as I call him, Andre Jackson Jr. So with Ajax, who was a Greek mythological figure who was second in command to whoever, Ulysses or somebody who was the main dude. But Ajax, first of all, when you look at him as a non-shooter, and then you look at his numbers, it doesn't jive. It doesn't, because he's shooting 39% from the 3-point line. The last 5 games or so, he's up around 50%, minimal amount of attempts, under 2 attempts per game. That's Ajax. And he's had some games where he's gone, 3 for 5, 2 for 4, some really good shooting games from the 3-point line. So that's the one thing, because of the limited amount of shots that he gets from long range, that just becomes, you just associate him with being a non-shooter. But my bigger point is this, and he had a couple of opportunities over the last 5 games, Bucks have gone 4-1, where he makes good cuts, Chris, catches the ball in the restricted area. And I've asked him, man, when you catch it there and you got your momentum going, you got your feet planted, can you just go up and reverse dunk that thing? And he's like, yeah, I could. Yeah. I mean, he's got to me, just be a little bit more plugged into finishing some of the stuff he gets inside. Because I think he thinks he's more closely guarded than he is. So he's looking to, like, he thinks he's got a crowd of guys around him. So he's looking to find it. Sometimes he's there and he's got at least a count, maybe two, where he can finish off the play. And he's done that a couple of times, gotten fouled, gotten to the free throw line. But, I like to see him look to be more aggressive on those catches in the restricted area off of cuts when his momentum he's in that coil position momentum-wise on the catch. And now he can explode up and move the ball around, draw some contact and finish, get to the free throw line, do whatever he needs to do. He's got that kind of talent. But as we talked about, we've been talking about it all year. He's a guy that needs to be in this rotation just because of chasing down loose balls, offensive rebound opportunities. His defense against Cade Cunningham, his defense has been really, really good against some of the better offensive players. I think Cade Cunningham was like 3 for 13 or something. I mean, he had a stretch of games there where his defense was just outstanding. So I think he's needed, man. He's needed in this rotation someplace. If not a starter, someplace in this rotation, Ajax is needed.
Yeah, and my quick thing on Doc leaving him on the floor, he's got to step up and take those shots, be down, ready to shoot when he's open. He's knocked down, as you mentioned, multiple threes on a couple of different occasions. So and the percentages speak for themselves. Like if a guy is, shooting at 37, 38% from the three, then, he's got to be able to take that shot with some confidence. Also, like when Ajax is coming off of that sort of zoom action or that handoff action to where he's coming off on the wing, getting a piece of the paint, looking for lobs for Giannis. I mean, him to Giannis, him to Brook, Ajax as the designated lobber. I think that also does wonders for the Bucks as far as offensive continuity, motion, and then keeping the bigs involved. So that was the question from the Justin Willis, MJ. That was our first one in the mailbag. I got another one from Turner Tracy, who is at TT Tracy 24 on Twitter, or currently known as X. His question was, it seems like Giannis and Brook have really been gelling together, locking down the paint at an elite level recently. Have the numbers reflected this? Is it similar to when Buckner had Allen and Mobley, Greg Buckner at Cleveland? Is his defense starting to click? You two great ball IQ and insights, keep it up. You two have great b-ball IQ and insights, keep it up. So basically the question is, Giannis and Brook, what are your thoughts? Is this like Jared Allen and Mobley when Greg Buckner had a top 4 defense in the NBA the last several years?
Very, very astute observation, because that's the idea of the defense, is to funnel as much as possible into both Brook and Giannis. Doc has talked about how he ideally doesn't want them venturing too far from the restricted area in terms of rim protectors. Now, the eye test will tell you. I mean, I shared this on Give and Go with Antonio Daniels and Rob Perez earlier today when I was on their show. I haven't seen a guy block as many lob dunks for a season as Giannis has done in the first month of the season. He's blocked about 4 or 5. I know Jalen Green. I mean, I can't think of all the guys, but I mean, Detroit had, I think, the young beast, Duran. It's a bunch of guys that have had these lob, layup, dunk type attempts at the rim that Giannis has just come out of nowhere and just wiped away clean. I mean, those are it's kind of like that. What's the big man from Phoenix? He got him in the NBA Finals. DeAndre Ayton. That just got everybody. So Giannis's defensive spectacular plays like that are plays to get this team pumped up and really inspire you as a teammate. Brook Lopez, same thing. I mean, Brook is just the cleanup man. He is so good at just at the last minute. Brook is 7 feet, 7'1" with a 7'5", 7'6" wingspan, and he uses every bit of that wingspan to patrol the paint and block shots. And every year, Brook, and we talked about this before, in terms of contested twos, far and away, I'm talking about a 400, 500, 300, 500, just the difference between he and the next guy, Chet Holmgren, whoever it was last year. And he's actually blocking more shots, Brook Lopez is. So, and then to your specific point about numbers, in terms of defensive accuracy around the rim in that area of the floor. The last 5 games where the Bucks have been winning and been really good defensively, the Bucks are number 5 around the rim, 56% defensive field goal percentage at the rim. And that's Brook, that's Giannis. And then I think what's going on too is that in terms of being better at the point of attack, I think the guards and the wings are doing a better job for the Bucks, making sure that these bigs aren't constantly having to contest at the rim over. And this is what Brook had an issue with, I think, more so or last year, earlier this season too. But so the numbers do support that.
Yeah, and more numbers. Opponents are shooting 60.5% in the restricted area on the season versus the Bucks, which is the 4th best mark in the NBA. Last 5 games with Brook and Giannis on the floor, the Bucks have a 106.5 defensive rating. The average defensive rating in the NBA is 114.2.
Yeah.
So the numbers do support it. Now, for me personally, the eye test, it's all about extra efforts. It's all about, and to your point, MJ, the guards are doing, and the perimeter guys are doing such a much better job of sticking to their defenders on screen and rolls, fighting through screens, not making Brook and Giannis have to be in these positions to help and show so heavily. And Brook and Giannis are, remember early in the season when Greg Buckner was saying, or part of the defensive philosophy of the Bucks was to keep the guys, not from going out running and contesting on the corner threes, but against the Bulls. And it was something I spoke to when you had Vucevic and Jalen Smith and these guys that are stepping out, these bigs stepping out beyond the line. You got to have a sense of urgency. Screw what the defensive scheme may say. That's an open 3 that needs to have a hand up. Giannis and Brook continuously made those second efforts closing out to the corners. If you go back and watch that Bulls game, you'll see them flying by, running Vucevic off the line, making him a driver. This is what they didn't do in the first matchup with the Bulls, but you see and Doc said it in the in his post-game press conference, the Bucks are now playing with an increased sense of urgency every single possession. And that's what it's going to take over the next 67 games, MJ, for Milwaukee to not only be a playoff team, but to make a deep run in the playoffs.
Well, and just to the final point, and I shared this also on Give and Go, is that when I pulled up the numbers for the Bucks over the last 5 games, they're 5th in defensive rating, doing a great job, but it's not like a bunch of numbers that just jumped off the page. So now when Coach Bud Budenholzer was here, the miscellaneous stats, the opponent points in the paint, opponent turnover percentage, the Bucks are never good at, but opponent fast break points, opponent second chance points. I mean, the Bucks are always, Chris, top 3 to 5 in those categories, plus having a top 3 to 5 offense, plus being number 2 or 3 in effective field goal percentage, plus being a top 5 or 6, 7 in defense. So they're always top 3 or 4 in net rating. And those are the teams that are going to be that net rating. The Boston Celtics, Oklahoma City. I mean, you look at the net rating, the disparity between the offense that you're putting out and the defense that you're putting out. Those are the teams, in my mind, those top 5 teams. Cleveland's one of them. Boston, Oklahoma City. Those are the teams that are playing great basketball that have a chance to be there at the end. So the Bucks, not quite there yet, but I think they're a work in progress. And the fact that they've been so successful, should have been 5-0 during this stretch of games. That game in Charlotte should have been in the win column. But still have room to improve is my point. Major room to improve.
Absolutely. And final question, MJ, from this week's Marcus's mailbag comes from Anil Saw, who's at ANIL_SAWH on X. The player rotation has been very freewheeling, even when most of the team is active. A lot of ride the hot hand, quote unquote, going on. Some lineups based on matchups. Do the Bucks have a lockdown? Do the Bucks have to lock down a set rotation at some point? And if so, who do you think sticks?
Well, I think that kind of works itself out depending on who's effective. Now, if we had to take a look at it now and kind of speculate based on current play, current impact, who's kind of earned rotation minutes, AJ Green name would definitely come to the forefront. The way he shot the basketball, the defense that he's playing, how he fights and battles defensively. Now, he'll get into some situations. I forget the teams where they'll hunt for him and Cleveland. and Darius Garland had him out on an island. But like Doc says, because he battles, you've got to find a way to help him. That's whether they're sending a blitzer screen or another defender to get the ball out of Darius Garland's hands. But you can't allow that quicker player to continually, get an advantage against AJ. But he's going to fight in battle. So I think he's earned. I think Andre Jackson Jr., even though the offense can be sporadic, appearing at times, even though the numbers don't say so. But I think his hustle, his athleticism, he's earned some rotation. I tell you, DeLon Wright, our guy from Lusinger High School, a local guy, he's actually starting to play well. Now he was on a minutes restriction. I still don't know the whole story, but there was some type of minutes restriction early on, so it seemed like he was dealing with something. And speaking of dealing with something, Gary Trent had a back issue, still played, shot the ball horribly, 22-20, very un-Gary Trent-like. Now his back is feeling great, and you see what he's doing. He's knocking down a three, and his defense, he's getting up in guys.
He's all over the place.
He's all over the daggone place. So the guys, Taurean Prince, and look, he's not going to be, you can't count on him every game for 15, 18, 20 points. He's going to have his down games like he had recently, but he's given you some great perimeter defense and on occasion has really, really been a big factor offensively. So to answer your question, Steve Kerr with Golden State is playing 10, 11, 12 guys sometimes. I think this is the time. Ryan Rollins, I left him out. He's got the shoulder instability, but the game he started, I forgot who that was against, but he started out 1 for 7, but finished up with Toronto. It was finished up with 12 points and was whatever it was, 5 for 8 or something from that point on. But he's a guy that I think, you need to continue to kind of give some minutes, take a look at once he comes back from the shoulder instability. So I don't think you worry about locking down right now. Chris Middleton is yet to return. You got to see how he factors into the rotational dynamic in terms of what he brings to the table, what you need more of, what you have enough of when he comes back. But right now it's all about just I think you got to get these guys some confidence, man. Got to let them play. Got to let them play in meaningful minutes right now. Get their confidence up, see how they perform, and then as the season progresses, when you want to rest some of your older 30-plus-year-old veterans, you'll know who will be able to step into the void and contribute. So that's my. So to answer your question, long-winded way of saying no, I don't think you need to lock it down right now. But I think after the All-Star break, come March, now you think about maybe trying to pare it down to a 9-man rotation, 10-man, maybe at the most. But Pat Connaughton's made some great plays. It's just, Bobby Portis. It's hard to leave guys out right now, especially these young legs, man. You need the young legs, especially during the dog days of the NBA.
Appreciate it, MJ. That was this week's Marcus's Mailbag. We appreciate everybody's questions and continue to submit. This is our new weekly segment. We're looking forward to answering your questions on Twitter.
All right. Here, District. About to wrap this bad boy up, man. Put a bow on it, man. Been a great show. Rob Perez, want to thank him again. Thank you for participating in Marcus's Mailbag with all your intelligent basketball questions. Made a guy have to dig deep into the recesses of his basketball IQ to come up with it.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was indeed, man. So now where can they find us, man? What's going on?
They gotta like us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, and you can subscribe to this podcast on Bucks Plus Audio or wherever you get your podcast. Please follow us at Bucks Plus Audio on Twitter as well. I'm at Point Forward Pro. He's at Old School 88, and we are out of here.
Yeah. See you next week.
This has been a Bucks Plus audio production.